Even though Zelda tends to have recurring plot structure and gameplay loops, each game tends to have a distinct identity that sets each one apart and appeals to different people enough that asking people what their favorite Zelda game is results in many varying answers. Some of you say, well duh, that game is the wolf one, or that game is the bird one. But I mean something a bit deeper than that. Each game finds its own identity through its various parts coming together to tell a theme, like aesthetics for example. I'm sure no Zelda fan is a stranger to the story of the initial enmity, Wind Waker's massive art style shift from the N64's Zeldas. Oh, this gonna be dope as hell. What the fuck? Before becoming one of the most beloved aesthetics in video games, of course. The story has become really amusing to me considering the themes that surround Wind Waker. Wind Waker itself is a story about a world and its inhabitants chained by remnants of its past, somewhat forcing it to try and go back, before eventually letting go and embracing the future. Within the opening storybook sequence, the game claims that the memory of the kingdom vanished, but the legends remained on the wind's breath. This is a very poetic way of saying that remnants of the past remain within this world, which is shown throughout Wind Waker. I should preface that although Wind Waker is a great standalone game in this series, it is quite clearly a sequel to Ocarina of Time. The world of Wind Waker is without a doubt a flooded version of Hyrule from Ocarina, which, water being literally everywhere where there wasn't before is quite a significant change in the world. But despite this change, there are still familiar remnants of the old world littered throughout. Dragon Roost Island evokes memories of Death Mountain, but is actually a transformed Zora's Domain with the Rito tribe inhabitants being a descended evolved species of the Zoras. I'm not gonna talk about how that makes any fucking sense, but it's cool. Another example is Windfall Island, which acts as the game's equivalent to Kakariko Village, alluded to with the Village OST being a remix of the usual Kakariko Village theme. Kakariko and other games such as A Link to the Past and Ocarina are shown to be very lived-in, active yet humble towns. Windfall has sort of a similar energy but is more bouncy and energetic, just like Wind Waker is compared to those games, which is an example of how Wind Waker adds to its own identity to things, something I'll touch on later. The town also kind of fills the same role, but Wind Waker feels slightly more lavish somehow, which could possibly be because they sprinkled a little bit of Castletown into its identity. There's the familiar Great Deku Tree, with Korrax not being too different from the Kokiri. When the Great Deku Tree sees you, he literally asks if you are the hero of time, albeit in Hylian, so you can only understand him when the dialogue is translated in the second quest. He gets so excited to see you that he reverts back to his old language, this ancient relic of the past, getting excited over this familiarity and hope that seeing the hero of time would bring. And also, if you're not convinced, the 7 sages from Ocarina are literally on stained glass in Hyrule Castle. So there's not really much to interpret differently than, yeah, this is an Ocarina of Time sequel. The setting is not the only aspect of the game that ties its cohesive ideas together. Many of the characters in Wind Waker delve into this idea in different ways. Starting off are the descendants of important bloodlines tied to Hyrule. Makar, Medley, and Tetra, all of these characters are whipped out of their current life in order to fulfill some duty chained to them by their ancestors. Tetra is clearly a free spirit that loves just fucking being a badass pirate, but the details of her background are interesting. Recorders show a picture of the legendary hero of time, a picture of a Triforce, and a picture of a royal-looking maiden we can assume to be her mother or some, other ancestor. We can interpret that she was raised with some knowledge common to the Hylian royal family for some grand duty, but instead of her seeing her do that at first, she is doing hard as fuck pirate shit and loving it. When Ganondorf looks into her dreams, he sees nothing but oceans, which could infer that she loves the sea and sailing on it. But of course, the past catches up to her, and she is yanked out of that life to step into the role of Princess Zelda. That is what is sad about the past coming up to catch these kids. They have stuff in their life that is meaningful to them. Medley likes being an attendant and watching Komali grow as a person, saying she feels some sort of bittersweet motherly feeling watching after him. And then Makara loves playing that stupid little instrument to the Great Deku Tree. The new species that have evolved from the Rito and Kokiri have their own cultures now. The Kokiri have moved on from their horticulture and fairy obsession to having little festivals, rituals, and duties amongst themselves. And the Rito love postal service. This incarnation of Link is the perfect protagonist for Wind Waker. He's goofy and expressive, just like the game's aesthetic, and he has no sort of relation to the hero of time. He's not a descendant at all. He's not even very heroic. He acts like a dork and jumpy when something scares him, and when he beats a boss, he starts jumping around like an idiot. He essentially gets ripped out of his lazy life on the island because of his sister being kidnapped, due to Ganondorf hunting down Zelda's blood descendant. He's not a hero who is destined for this journey, but a kid that wants to get his sister back, but grows into the hero role. At the end of the game, he finally obtains the Triforce of Courage through his own actions, and the King of Red Lions doesn't don him as the next hero of time, but his own hero, the hero of winds. Link in this game represents the fish out of the water. He is a character who is out of the loop when it comes to these fates of Hyrulean bloodlines and ancient figures duking it out. But that's what makes this characterization so good and important. He's a sign of hope for the new world and future, being a hero that finds his own way, instead of innately being donned a hero due to possessing important blood or being chosen by the gods. This game's conflict of being chained to the past is best represented by the two key characters and the best in the game, the King of Red Lions and Ganondorf. Ganondorf is a very different depiction in this game. He does have the same malevolent aura about him and does evil shit like usual, but he seems much more contemplative and driven by something beyond a pure lust for power. When you meet him in the bedroom, he spitefully points out how the world is mostly a useless ocean to him, going as far as to say that the gods have destroyed humanity. This shows Ganondorf's pessimistic perspective towards the state of the world. This is all continued by a scene of a boss fight later of how the winds of his land brought nothing but discomfort and death. He says he coveted the wind of Hyrule that could free him from the state of perpetual torment and suffering he was born into, and here he is, still coveting that wind. The old Hyrule was idyllic for Ganondorf, and he still yearns for it more than anything, to the point of doing bad shit to get it. Symbolic of a place he wishes he could reach to personally feel at peace. But this is a huge mistake on Ganondorf's part. Hyrule represents the bitter past, the regrets and the mistakes made by many people. This is where the King of Red Lions comes into play. He, like Ganondorf, is also chained to Hyrule, saying that he has lived every day with regrets towards what happened and wishes he did something differently, living bound to Hyrule just as Ganon was, but despite that, he doesn't try to bring back his old kingdom. He instead makes the ultimate decision of the story to let that bitter past be washed away and to give hope to the people living in the current world. Here he gives one of my favorite lines from a video game, a simple line that perfectly gets across what the game is about in response to Tetra saying they'll find a new Hyrule. With this, he closes the door on the past to make way for the future. Link and Tetra are reunited with their friends and family from this ocean-filled world, glaring sign of hope. Even Medley and Makar are there, signifying how they don't have to be chained to their role as sages and are free to do whatever they can in this world freed from Hyrule's chains. And that's what this game is about. Wind Waker is quite clearly a sequel to Ocarina of Time, and it stylistically differs a ton. The remnants of Ocarina still dwell within this game, but Wind Waker decides to dive ahead with clear deviations as a way to break free of it a little. The past is always there, you can't get rid of it, but you can still let the regrets wash away and look forward to whatever uncharted territory might exist. The people of this world were given a pretty crummy world. One of my favorite parts of King Daphne's last speech is how he laments that the sunken world is the only world their ancestors could give them. I love this not only because it's a little applicable to some real world situations, but it's such a beautiful sentiment to regret that he couldn't give these two kids a better world to work with, but still sets them off to hope for a good future despite this broken world they've been left with. He even tells them to use hope to sustain them, knowing darkness will surely come again. I've personally always been a big fan of Wind Waker for its vibrant and expressive art style, its smooth gameplay feel. It's so good. And those moments out at the Great Sea where you find yourself settled upon a small island and gaze out on the sea, bobbing up and down, and the sense of adventure it evokes, knowing there are more diamond in the rough locations like this, amidst the barren Great Sea. But ever since I've been a kid, my mind always drifts to the final scene with the King of Hyrule, due to the emotions it evokes. And as I have gotten older, I've realized how this scene contextualizes the entire journey of Wind Waker to be one more sentimental. The locations in Wind Waker are remnants of days long past, but evolved to have their own sense of identity and richness to them. In a meta sense, it's just like Wind Waker itself, a game coming off the heels of Ocarina of Time, a game widely considered by fans to be the greatest of all time. But just like the characters in the game, Wind Waker acknowledges how important Ocarina of Time is, but how they want Wind Waker to be its own thing despite it being deeply rooted in Ocarina of Time. When the King of Hyrule says that whatever land they find won't be Hyrule, it will be their land, in a way he is saying that nothing will be Ocarina of Time again, but he says it triumphantly because that is okay. Change and evolution are good. When Tetris says they go wherever the wind will take us, it expresses how there's no destination in mind because whatever lies beyond is new and exciting. And that's one of the sentiments Wind Waker expresses, is how exciting discovery can be. These ideas and sentiments beyond the story are what really keep me coming back to Wind Waker. It's what comes to me while I'm dissociating at 2 a.m. and makes me think, damn, that was a good game.